Hi everyone, I'm Sam.
And I'm Jess.
And welcome to the Creative Scale Up video. Fully funded by the Department for Digital, Creative, Media and Sport, the Creative Scale Up program, an exciting new initiative designed to empower creative businesses to realise their full growth potential and gain investment to take their business to the next level. The program is delivered on behalf of the Greater Manchester Combined Authority and the Business Growth Hub in partnership with GC Angels. In every episode, we spotlight a particular subsector of the creative industries and highlight just how lucrative they can be as opportunities for investors, and with the help from excellent panellists from the industry.
This month, we hosted a digital event, Invest in Creative Media, in partnership with the Scale Up Institute, UK Business Angel Association, and Creative England. We'll jump straight to the recording of our event and hear from Irene Graham, CEO of the Scale Up Institute, with some insights into scale-ups in the UK.
What I'm going to talk about is really set the scene about why scale-ups matter to Greater Manchester and why this is such an important programme and why it's so important to get the investors as well as the businesses together through that period of time. So if we just move on to the next slide, Sam, if that's possible. I'm not being able to move at the moment. Thank you. Just a little bit about the Scale Up Institute. We're a private sector organisation, but we work in partnership with Greater Manchester, with the Growth Company there, and with a range of private sector players. So some of what we're bringing to this Scale Up programme is the range of businesses, funders, financiers, and academic researchers that we bring to help you in Manchester and the businesses that are on this programme. So we're looking forward to working with you going forward. Why are scale-ups important and what's the challenge for us? Well, in the UK, we've traditionally been incredibly good at starting businesses. We have been third in the world, but we're not very good at growing them. And that's why this programme is so important, because it's really focusing on how do we help businesses in Greater Manchester grow, particularly in the creative sector. And why is that important? Well, our scale-up businesses currently account for a huge amount of the growth in our SME sector. You will all have heard the fact that we have around about 5.7 million SMEs, and they generate 1.9 trillion to the UK economy. But it's our scale-ups, our businesses that are growing at 20% or more in turnover or employment, that are generating 1.3 trillion of that. So they have a huge impact if we can get our SME businesses to scale up and grow further and help them on that journey. Huge impact to the national and indeed the local economies. Our scaling businesses, which many of you in this audience are also more than your counterparts. You're very innovative, far more innovative than your SME peers, and also very productive and employ a whole range of local individuals into the businesses that you run. And whilst you're across sectors, we also see really great progress in the creative sector as part of that. In Greater Manchester alone, you have just over 1,500 scale-ups, and they generate around 22.5 billion to the economy there. So if we look at these figures, and these are published data from ONS government statistics, the creative sector as a whole generates about 18 billion in terms of the scale-ups who are in the creative sector. And we've seen that gradually increase since 2013, from 700 to just over 1,100. So that's progressively getting better, but this whole programme is about how do we take this into the next level of activity. There are challenges for scaling up, and those of you that are in a scale-up business understand those challenges. You've got challenges in recruiting the right people, challenges in getting access to markets, challenges in sometimes building out that leadership team that you have, and also challenges around getting the right finance into the business. And particularly what we find with the creative sector, and a big focus for us today, is that access to finance. More creative businesses find it harder to know where the right finance is, and understand as well what the mix of equity can be in terms of the right approach and what is the right type of equity to bring into the business. And that's why Sam and Jess are so focused across this programme and in today's session on how do we address that knowledge on equity finance, and how do we get investors better understanding the opportunities that the creative sector offers. So alongside the markets challenge and talent challenge, this finance challenge is a really big issue for our scaling businesses. We're looking forward to working with you. That was a quick rundown about why this is so important, why scale-ups are so important, why the creative sector is so important. And I have to say, at this moment in time, with Brexit and COVID, this programme has even more relevance and even more importance, because we know the creative sector is suffering at the moment in many different of the subsectors. And this is really important in terms of how we gather around you for the future, as well as the investors that can make a difference. So thank you very much, Sam and Jess. I'll stop there and pick up any questions at the end.
Some incredible insights from Irene there at the Scale Up Institute. Next, we go to Jenny Tooth, CEO of the UK Business Angel Association, who highlighted that the creative sector does not get the attention it deserves from private investors.
Thanks very much for having me, Jess. And that was a very helpful start. And I just really wanted to move on now to talking a little bit more about the investment scene. This is really what we're here about today, and very much the work that Irene at the Scale Up Institute and we are doing at UK Business Angels Association. So those of you who don't know the Business Angels Association, we are a trade body for angel investing. We have been supporting angels for many years now. We were set up in 2012. We work with about 18,000 angels across the UK in about nearly 80 angel groups of all different shapes and sizes, plus with many other investor players. And why angels? Well, because angels are such a vital part of that whole supply chain in working with small businesses. They are the first part of that vital money that goes into businesses, and really that first big rung in scaling a business. It's very difficult to know how many angels and what they're all doing here across the UK, but what we do know is that over 2 billion was invested by early stage investors, by private investors in over 4,000 businesses in the last tax year. So you can really see how significant that amount of money is and how important it is to our economy and to small businesses. But actually, one of the big challenges, and this is really looking at the regions and somewhere like Greater Manchester as well, is that over 60% of that money at the moment is very much focused on London, the South East. This is very much really an issue for us that we're all tackling. It's really a means of how we can bring more investment up to the north. So if we look at that at the moment, there's probably only about 10% of all of that angel capital being focused on the northwest and Greater Manchester. So we're very much looking now to see how we can bring more capacity to this space. And if you look at it, angels bring between about 100K and about 1.5 million in a deal, which of course is very, very significant indeed. But actually, because they invest across all different sectors, at the moment, the creative industry sector is not really attracting sufficient attention among investors. And that's really been a big issue for us. And when we did our research and talked to our community, we found that only about 14% of all deals are being done in the creative industries, and much lower levels of investment are going to creative industries too. So really, where do we go from here? Well, one of the big things, of course, is we know when we talk to investors that they say we don't have access to a sufficient pipeline of exciting growth-ready businesses among creative industries. And we know, of course, that there are many out there. They say they don't understand enough the sector, they don't have access to market intelligence or information. And again, that's another very significant issue for investors if they're going to really understand the opportunities. And also they don't get enough exposure. They don't see those businesses in showcasing. And again, if you think about that, that's the big way that we as angels will find out what to invest in, which is understanding the opportunities. You might well be wondering why I'm even talking about investing right now, and wondering whether the angels have all climbed back inside their dens and not investing. But actually, we have found that over this time, angels have really been helping their small businesses. And this really gives you a flavour of how important angel investing is. They've been rolling up their sleeves. They've been supporting their portfolio businesses. They've actually been bringing a lot of advice, help, bringing business experience, introductions to customers, everything they can do to help, including more money at this time. And of course, as Irene already mentioned, many businesses across the creative industries may well have been affected, but at the same time, we also know there are some really exciting opportunities across the creative industries. Many of them have been really taking advantage of COVID to address many of the challenges, bring great innovative solutions and great business ideas. So what we need now are more investors, more angels and more individuals to come forward to help really back those great businesses here that have really got growth ideas and growth opportunities going forward. And that's very much what we're about. And that's why really we have been so delighted to be working with Scale Up Institute, with their growth company, and with many players as part of this DCMS pilot. And a big part of what we'll be doing, therefore, is how can we strengthen that investor knowledge and investor engagement with creative industries? So we've really thought about what you might need, and we thought perhaps one of the most significant things at this time is to really help build your knowledge and skills as investors, to help them really understand those opportunities. So we're developing a new online tool, which will be accessible to anyone who wants to understand more about investing in the creative industries. We'll be drawing on sector experts and existing investors to give their experience and expertise. We'll be organising many more webinars like this one, and also face-to-face events, and especially events that focus on bringing access to market intelligence so that investors can really understand how to put their money behind great businesses, how to understand those businesses, and how to really get the most out of those opportunities. And we're not just going to talk to existing investors. We want many more new investors to come forward. So we will be out there building awareness, hoping to recruit many more individuals and helping them to build their knowledge about angel investing, and also helping them to integrate into existing groups or help perhaps build new, very focused creative industries syndicates around the region. And then I think finally, the big thing we really want to do is to make sure that those investors have plenty of access to creative businesses. So there'll be lots of opportunity for engagement, for interaction on pitching, for being part of panels, and really wanting to build that exciting new community around creative industries. And of course, it won't just be the angels. We'll be talking to the investors right through that whole scale-up value chain and making those connections and helping to build an ecosystem. So we're very much looking forward to working with Jess and Sam and colleagues here, and especially hoping great investment towards the fantastic creative industries businesses that you have here. So I'll stop there and hand back to Jess and Sam.
A huge thank you to Jenny there for an insightful view of angel investing in this space. Next, it's our panel of creative media experts. We spoke to Stuart Logan, CEO of Twine, and Helen Fish, CMO of Beatstream, founders of businesses with highly exciting creative digital offerings. They were joined by Mike Pearls, founder of successful Manchester digital agency MC2 and a private investor in creative media. And finally, Tim Evans, investment lead at Creative England. Amongst a wide-ranging discussion, we also touched on the ongoing COVID-19 situation and the impact this is having in the creative space. I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves, but just sort of before we get started, I thought I would just share with you, just maybe for people who are listening who are not quite so aware, the Arts Council has defined creative media as artistic and cultural works, content created for digital platforms or distribution digitally to reach the public. Which I thought if anybody didn't know what creative media was, then that is one stab at trying to define it. So starting with you, Tim, would you mind sort of introducing yourself and your connection to creative media?
Hi, thanks for inviting us. I'm Tim Evans. I'm the head of investment at Creative England. Creative England is a not-for-profit agency that supports the sector, the creative sector in general, through advocacy, membership organisations, business support, and very importantly, investment. I head up the investment side of the business there, and creative media has been, I would say, the predominant subsector in the creative sector that we've invested in since 2013.
Thank you. So it's going to be really useful to tease out some of your insights and knowledge and some of the questions in the panel today. Next on to Stuart.
Hi everyone. So I'm Stuart, the CEO and founder of Twine. Twine's an online marketplace that connects companies to creative and digital freelancers. So that's everything from animators and illustrators all the way through to marketers and web developers. We have over 300,000 freelancers registered on Twine now. We've been going for quite a while. I always try and shorten the time scale that we've been going so it makes us sound more like a startup, but it's probably been about 5 years now. We've raised just under £1 million to date. That's helped us grow, so I can share some insight about that experience.
Great, thank you. And it's really good to sort of get your perspective, representing all of that creative talent in the freelancer world, which is such an important component of what makes creative work. And of course, your experiences raising are hugely valuable. And Helen, next, please.
Am I on? Yeah. Sorry, it doesn't change. Hi, everyone. I'm Helen. I'm one of the co-founders of Beatstream. Beatstream is a live music streaming platform. So it allows bands and artists that once one of their events have sold out, they're allowed to open up to a whole worldwide audience and sell a ticketed stream. Before COVID, we were working with arenas and big bands, but we've changed things slightly because obviously there's no live events at the moment. So we've got remote streaming setup at the moment. We've got DJs in their home doing weekly streams, selling a ticket. Once bands can get together again, they can stream from their studios and again, earn revenue through selling tickets to the streams, which isn't widely available in any of the platforms at the moment. So yeah.
Thanks very much, Helen, and we'll sort of pick your brains a bit more about that in the questions and also your sort of experiences raising as well. So we'll come to that. And last but certainly not least, Mike.
Hi, welcome everyone, and thanks, Jess. My role in creative industries, I'm Chief Executive of MC2. MC2 is one of the largest independent strategic marketing agencies, part of an international network, 115 offices around the globe. I also chair a few different creative industries, so I was just trying to toss it up, so just bear with me. I chair a digital marketing agency, I've got a training agency, TV production agency, and a new audio on demand network. We've just been through a fundraise, just raised half a million successfully, which is good. I also chair Greater Sport, sit on the board at MMU, I'm visiting professor of marketing at MMU, sit on the board of the Rugby League World Cup 2021, and Maggie's charity, Tim Bacon Foundation, and the GM Mayor's charity as well. Lots
of chairs. So excellent. That's, as everyone can clearly see there, we've got a hugely experienced panel with lots of different insights from lots of different angles. So we're going to go till probably around 10 past-ish, I think, and then we'll get to some questions from the audience. And again, just to reiterate, please feed those through into the Q&A and I will pick those up. So I think a good place to sort of start and just maybe to pick up on something you said in your intro, Tim, around, or certainly when we spoke in the week around creative media, in terms of sort of how the sector fits together and kind of the various sort of components within it. How does sort of Creative England view creative media?
Yeah, happy to elaborate on that. I suppose, I mean, the creative sector is no different to other sectors in that, you have your old guard, you have the new and emerging players, and then the rest of the people are there running to stay relevant. But I suppose in terms of those established companies, you have your global players in terms of broadcast, in terms of production and content and games, as well as ad and marketing. But I think the reality is that particularly in the UK, that the sector is predominantly made up of those small independent players and those small independent agencies and producers. But in terms of where the sector is going, I think there's a really positive trajectory and an exponential growth in terms of non-linear ways that media can kind of project. And I think, and again, it's not just those, the larger players like your Apples and your Netflix, but, people like companies like, your Twitches and your Yogcasts and Bristol that create greater opportunities for those smaller independents to sell their products and be relevant. And I think, and I think Irene mentioned Whooshi earlier, and I think the importance of technology and allowing new and emerging companies to also create, and not emerging, established companies from different sectors to also kind of create their own media content means that it's a really vibrant and changing makeup of companies within that sector.
Yeah. And Stuart, just to kind of that point around freelancers, how sort of typical do you think that is in terms of the ratio, I guess, of freelancers versus companies having FTEs in them, for example?
Sorry, what's the question again?
So the kind of makeup of the creative sector in terms of sort of people who are hired in a full-time role versus freelancers, right, in general.
Yeah, I mean it's been growing generally. So there's a really interesting statistic actually around, this is global outside the UK, but 40% of the workforce will freelance in some capacity this year. But actually what's more interesting is when you look at the different generations, Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z, each younger generation is more likely to freelance than the preceding one. So there definitely seems to be a trend there. I don't know whether, what we often see is freelancers often will work in a group anyway together, and then they'll start and form a studio. That starts to compete with the agency world as well. So there's some overlap there. I think particularly in animation and design, you see that. And then there's also collaboration, I guess, with agencies and freelancers, particularly with project-based work. So things like videography work, some development work as well. So yeah, it's growing. Freelancers in the creative sector is certainly growing. And I think remote working is going to accelerate that further as well. Yeah,
definitely. And I guess, Mike, sort of from having a digital agency, how do kind of you see yourself sort of fitting into that sector, whether you're typical or whether you're not?
It's interesting because I think Stuart's got an incredible business idea, and I think it's so right for now. If you look at Irene's figures, where I think she's had 48 visible scale-ups in this sector, and I think there's a reason for that in that it's always been iterative, the growth. You've always got people who are really good at what they're doing, who then create an agency, who then gather a few more folk around it, who then get to a certain stage. They get to a certain stage, and by that point, it's almost too comfortable for the chief exec or major shareholder, because they're earning decent money. The risk assessment is that they then don't want to actually take the leap to actually bring equity in or bring extra debt in, and therefore they run as lifestyle businesses. I think probably this period will create a lot of people who will sit down and say, what does the new model look like? And it'll probably look like using the likes of Stuart's business, to actually create a proper scale up that works across the globe and across the clock, I would say.
Yeah, well, that's great, because you've just given me a really natural segue. Thank you for that, into the next question, which was sort of around how really we can't really avoid talking about the current situation with COVID-19, but how what impact has that sort of had on the market? What obstacles has that created? But then also, what is the opportunity? So I will go to I think I'll go to Helen first, actually, and I know she sort of alluded to it in her intro. But if you can just sort of highlight for us, Helen, what impact it has had on your sector, and then kind of what you're starting to see happen, even if it's just from within your little sort of microcosm of audio streaming, and what are the real opportunities that are now emerging?
Yeah, so obviously there's no music halls open, there's no live music venues, so there is nowhere for the bands, local musicians and artists to perform, to earn any money. Since lockdown, what we've seen is that a lot of bands and artists have been doing live streams during Facebook just to keep that interaction going with their fan base, but they're not earning any money. Their revenue has absolutely gone to zero. So what we're finding now is we've started getting artists coming to us asking if there's any, for them to be able to stream remotely. So we changed our tech slightly, so we didn't need an audio engineer to go and do the setup. And we've got, remote artists at the moment in the UK streaming on our platform, but over the next few weeks we're arranging a festival, and we've got artists in Canada, all over the world really, all over Europe. So it's obviously something that's needed throughout the world, that artists need another way of earning a revenue really.
Yeah. And do you see that sort of change that has been caused by what's been going on? Do you kind of feel like some of that will stick around even if we return to some level of normality? Do you kind of feel that's going to remain?
Yeah, I think there was always a need for it, because an artist was their ability to earn revenue was always capped by the capacity of the venue. So if they're a sellout artist, once the tickets have gone, that's it. They can't make any more money. Merchandise, but you don't earn much from that. So there was always a need to be able to sell tickets, further afield. But now, they need this service. So.
Quite an exciting time, and the fact that you've been able to pivot so quickly, and you've got something that can just deliver this at a scalable level is incredible, really. So, and I guess Stuart, so from Twine, I know we've had conversations about this in the background already, but in terms of like, what have you seen in terms of the impact on the creative market from your end, in terms of both the freelancers and then the businesses that you endeavour to match through your service?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We've definitely seen more freelancers signing up to Twine, which suggests more people are looking for work. I think a lot of freelancers on long-term contracts would have lost their contracts over the last couple of months, which is obviously super unfortunate. And we actually surveyed our freelancers to find out how many had lost work due to COVID, and 17% said they had, which is obviously not good. Yeah. On the positive side, though, we have seen, from a freelancer's perspective anyway, we have seen a number of companies embracing remote working with freelancers. So where they've worked with an agency previously, and now they're looking at potentially working with a remote freelancer, Mike. And I see that trend kind of continuing. I think those companies who had would never have even considered working with a freelancer in the past, now because their whole teams are working remotely anyway, it doesn't seem such a burden to then suddenly work with a remote freelancer. So that creates a lot of opportunity. Suddenly, UK-based freelancers can sell their services globally more easily, which is exciting, because then, gone from however many SMEs are in the UK to globally, it's a huge increase in what your potential market could be. So there's struggles, but there's certainly opportunities. And then on the company side, we've also seen some companies furloughing staff, or obviously making staff redundant, and then switching to hiring freelancers to fill the gaps from where they've kind of where they've made people redundant. And I potentially see companies not going back there to some extent, where they will want a flexible resource. They're going to want to not necessarily have full-time staff, but have for certain types of work, they're going to leverage freelancers more to be able to deliver that. So there's a massive shift, and it's kind of moving week by week as well.
Yeah, and then there's some positive indications there, I guess, to smaller digital businesses. So yeah, that's quite exciting, I suppose. And Tim, just to sort of get more of an overview from you on your portfolio as a whole at Creative England, like what has the impact been across those creative businesses? I know that we touched on resilience in general, but yeah, how can you give us an overview from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, not too dissimilar to, again, experiences with the guys here and the other sectors. Loss of revenue, obviously, but also the challenges around business planning beyond the immediate, with uncertain horizons, become challenging, and then raising finance within those horizons or within that environment become difficult. But I think, we've been very proud of our cohort. Its resilience and its the creativity they've applied to their continuity planning. In terms of overcoming those challenges, we've been very active in making sure that their continuity plans are in place, that they are robust, and there's a healthy dose of skepticism, or maybe not skepticism, but pessimism as to the horizons to kind of normality there. So, but I think also as a cohort and as a sector, I think there's an awful lot we've seen that gives us reasons to be optimistic as a sector. There's an awful lot of sharing of best practice, of lessons learned. And, in terms of the institutions within the sector, I think it's been really positive that those institutions have got together to make sure that we're all speaking from a single voice when it comes to speaking to government. So I think the response has been incredibly positive.
Great, yeah, thank you for that. So I think moving into sort of funding new businesses in the creative industries, in particular within creative media. Mike, if I could come to you, we had a chat earlier in the week, last week, about sort of with your angel investor hat on and having sort of funded various different projects. I mean, if you could sort of give us an overview of what things you've learned as an investor in that sector, and what kind of opportunities do you see at the moment? If you would like to reference any that you're working on at the moment, then that would be helpful.
Thank you. In terms of you learn a lot more from your mistakes than you do from the positive things. I think so. So I'll be kind of open about that. I think I've learned an awful lot as well from the other board positions that I've got. If you sit on the board at MMU, you learn a lot about the why you're creating the conditions for creating value, as in the governance that you sit around an organisation, and what the role of an organisation is. The role of an organisation is to create value, and governance is there to actually create the conditions to enable that. And a board needs to be able to sit and take quality decisions, and therefore they need the right information to do that. So some of the things where I've invested, one of the early investments that I had was into a TV production business, and all of the macros were incredibly strong, as in, the BBC had just moved up to Media City. There was a big call for commissioning in the north. There wasn't any TV production that sat in the niche that we were going into. Everything, just felt like it was incredibly strong. And we had a very talented team. The issue was that the way that I chaired it, because it was creative industries, was everybody just wanted to have not board meetings, but sitting around in cafes having coffees. They didn't want to have the rigor of business around it and all the rest of it. And all of a sudden, you find when the discipline like that falls, everything else kind of goes along with it, and you just lose the focus and the vision in a business. The latter ones that I've invested in, I've set really strong conditions around it, and then looked at every different area of the process, the promotion, the people strategies, and the product strategies, and just made sure that we've absolutely nailed every single detail. So current one that, as we say, we've just been through a successful fundraise in the middle of this, without actually ever meeting the investors. They've thrown us £500,000 to get going, and the reason for that is that the model is based on creating and owning the IP that we can then make sure that we are getting value out of, and capital value at a later date. So I think most of the stuff that we'll be looking for from now on will be stuff where you can actually own the IP and build it from there.
Yeah, no, that's really, really useful. Thank you. So I wanted to come to both Stuart and Helen from a founder's perspective before I will come back to Tim from a sort of, again, an institutional portfolio overview and how they sort of deal with pipeline and progress them. So Stuart, I'll come to you first. So you've raised successfully before and you're raising again at the moment. Sort of, what are the kind of things that you would like to share, perhaps that a creative business or even an investor who would be a creative investor, what sort of things would you like them to know before they embark upon either raising themselves or taking part in a funding round for a creative business?
So from the business side of things, it's going to be hard. It's not easy. That's definitely the first thing to say. I think there's preconceived notions that the creative sector is not very lucrative compared to other sectors, and as a business owner trying to raise money, you constantly feel like you're up against that. The way I guess we overcame that was through traction, initially through user numbers on the platform, and that helped get people excited about the business. And then more recently, it's definitely been by demonstrating value, which obviously Mike mentioned earlier, and actually proving out revenue within the business and showing that people are winning work through Twine, and then we take commission. That's our business model. So really demonstrating that value and proving out the revenue model has significantly helped. So I think with a creative business, because you're up against that barrier straight away, like proving revenue has been really beneficial. And then I guess from an investor point of view, I think because there's that preconceived notion, there's a lot of opportunities for investors, because I think a lot of businesses in the creative sector are undervalued as a result. People don't realize the potential opportunity. I mean, Netflix was obviously mentioned earlier. I mean, that's one area, and it's obviously a massive poster child, but there's tons of consumer products and B2B creative sector businesses that have huge potential. So that there's definitely opportunities to be found.
Thank you, Stuart. And Helen from Beatstream, what are the sort of things, I guess, challenges that you encountered, and what would you like to see change in the kind of investor landscape, whether they be private individuals or institutional investors, when they're dealing with creative businesses?
Similar to what Stuart said, really, I think the hardest thing that we found in the very early days, we had this amazing idea, we had this amazing platform that was working, it was streaming live music from music venues, but getting traction was the hardest thing possible, getting revenue, because we had listeners on the platform, we had a basic version of the tech that worked, but the comments were the same from investors. We absolutely love it, it's brilliant, it's a bit risky, come back when you've got revenue. But it's a tech product, so you need a hell of a lot of money investment to get that product ready to the point where you can charge customers for it. So that's been a really long journey for us to get to that point. So, we've proven the business along the way, And along that journey, we've met as many investors as possible. And we've just been really lucky in that every now and then we met an angel that just 100% bought into it. It's music, so they would have had a passion for music and just saw the potential, and also weren't put off by the size, the potential of it. Because when someone asks you who your main competitors are and you say, well, it's Apple, Spotify and Deezer, and but they're not doing the same as us, that's just a no. So we've really had to find the right people that gave us the right gut feeling as well, because they're coming into our, you know, our team, and get, you know, and we've been lucky along the way, but it's taken a long time. And we've got to the point now where literally in the beginning of COVID, we're now revenue earning. So we've like turned a massive corner, and everything's different now. So I think I'd like to see more investors just be a bit more risk averse. I know it's really difficult to say because it's their money and they're investing, but there is a lot of this is great, but it's not for me. I want to invest in health tech because I know there's, you know, I know the potential, it's safer. So it'd just be nice to be able to access those type of investors that are just that little bit risk averse and are kind of driving their investments with some passion as well.
Yeah,
so
you've got some incredible hugely relevant angel investors, and I think you know, for other investors that would come along, I've just to, you know, for what Jenny was saying in her short talk, that actually they are hugely vital to making sure that when you do go out and raise, you get that traction with other investors. So you know, they will continue to be very useful to you, I'm sure. And Tim, so Helen and Stuart's experiences, is that kind of normal? Is that what you hear from creative businesses that are in your pipeline?
I think there's no doubt that, you know, there needs to be an awful lot more risk capital in the sector. I think it's really positive that there is a more positive appetite towards the creative sector now that people really start to understand what the opportunities are and what the scaling opportunities are there. You know, it is very different from 5 years ago, and maybe Stuart, even 5 years ago, and maybe even Stuart was starting out. And I think, you know, Helen made a really strong point. It's really important to start aligning yourself with the right investor. You probably have to kiss a lot of frogs, but if you have the, you know, a really galvanized and supportive investor base, then when you come to difficulties like COVID, then you'll probably get an awful lot more support. But, you know, I think there's some really interesting and emerging business models within the sector, so you really need someone to kind of understand it and get behind it. You know, I also really kind of back what Mike was saying in terms of kind of building the right conditions for success. Then, from an investor perspective, you know, we really look at those businesses that have the right expertise and the right support, not just at an exec level, but also, you know, have at an advisory level. You know, bringing on board people like Mike with their wealth of experience, you know, to help you kind of help you kind of map out what are the short-term, what the milestones that are going to get you from where you want to go. And that's really important. And I think from an investor perspective, you know, we don't invest in lone wolves. We really understand that actually those companies that do make it are the ones that have a really strong network and a really strong advisory base. I think that the challenges we have in the creative sector is ultimately that maybe some people in the sector really can't appreciate the need to balance the creativity with the commerciality. We have an awful lot of people engage with their artistic side and focus heavily on the creative output as opposed to kind of what's the kind of commercial opportunity there. So if the one bit of advice we need, you know, we try and pass on is that the importance of articulating what the commercial value is for the products and the creative content you're trying to create as well. So wholeheartedly agree with that, the importance of demonstrating and articulating that value.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And it's, yeah, absolutely right. It's important to have a balance of both. So I'm going to come now to talk to you about IP and scale. So, you know, often the most common ground in terms of or conversation that you can have with investors, maybe that have their experience in investing in tech, is they understand how to value IP or the importance rather of IP valuation. So I want to talk a little bit about how you actually value creative IP and how you can strengthen it. So Mike, I'll come to you to let Tim catch his breath. So we were sort of talking about in our chat while we were prepping for this, sort of tech assets versus creative ones, and understanding the significance of that IP from the get-go. And I know you touched on this in your intro with the investment that you've just the investment round that's just closed. Can you talk to us a little bit about, I guess, how you arrived at that decision and how important it's going to prove to be for this creative media business?
Yeah, I was reflecting back prior to this that in the 2017 Virgin Atlantic, it seems an age ago, doesn't it, given where they are, but Virgin Atlantic had just launched their first direct flight from Manchester to San Francisco, and I was working with the Cabinet Office putting together the Northern Powerhouse piece, and one way that we were driving the tech community together, I brought together 40 odd of the tech leaders and put them on the plane, and we kind of went out as one on a mission and spent a lot of time out there where, you know, for the tech businesses, it was quite easy because they were kind of licensing at Topco and the IP was flowing through to the various businesses. And actually the valuation of the IP was a lot easier to do based on the revenues that they were creating. In the creative industries side, I do think it's tougher where you're actually creating content, but that content then is the IP. The way that we were able to value it was actually based on the multiples of the deals that had taken place within the sector based on the IP that they actually had generated, and so we were kind of extrapolating from that from that point of view, and that seemed to work. And you know, from an investor point of view, it gave the investors the vision of what it was that we were trying to do, and understood that there was a international model or models that actually worked and gave them a comparable. And I think that's important. But whatever you do, you know, I think trying to own it is kind of key around investments.
Yeah, and it's absolutely critical to sort of not undervalue that creative work, because it is hugely important. And Tim, we were sort of talking about Creative England and how they will sort of look at IP when you're valuing a business before you make an investment. Can you just sort of share a bit of that methodology with us?
Well, it's incredibly challenging, I think, as a sector, recognising, valuing and finding secondary markets for IP is a challenge we really haven't cracked efficiently yet, and is an obstacle that has probably, again, put the creative sector a bit more of a disadvantage in challenging times like in the crisis we're facing. You know, from our perspective, we see an awful lot of deals in companies that really don't value their IP effectively. That does affect their balance sheet. Their balance sheet probably isn't as strong as it probably should be. And I think the challenge is that the support and the guidance out there is probably quite expensive to really understand that. So those smaller independent companies, it's probably slightly beyond them to really kind of put articulate that value. That said, I think it's probably important for companies like Creative England and our partners to articulate how important it is to articulate your balance sheet, the value of your IP. From our perspective as an investment, we probably look at it in the IP and to occasion the point at which we're investing to find valuations. And unfortunately, when things kind of don't go right, and where if there's positions of liquidation where we're trying to realise some degree of value and trying to find a secondary market for it, But in terms of the methodology, there's a great number there, depending on the types of companies. But it's certainly not something we've cracked.
Okay, great. So I'm going to move on to sort of scalability here, because I think creative has a lot going for it in this area. So Helen, just to sort of come back to you, I know you've sort of alluded to it in your intro, but I mean, how sort of scalable do you feel Beatstream is, and yeah, what things have you kind of seen that's telling you that actually there's very few, if any, barriers really to music, and how are you going to address that with your tech platform?
Well, music is, international. It's, people listen to music all over the world, regardless of the language. So we already know when we stream events at the moment, we've got listeners all over the world. It all depends on the artist, the audience of the artist. So at the moment, it's not a problem for people listening. What's interesting is how well, when we did Beatstream Box Office, the idea is that we send a music technician into the venue where they could stream directly out. Then we thought maybe we'd need more people in different countries going to the venues. But since we've changed it during COVID and now we can do remote setups, there's no reason why we can't have bands and artists all over the world streaming to an unlimited audience, gaining a new audience. It's very, very scalable. There's no limit to how many people can listen. And there's no limit to how many people can be on the platform at the same time. It's just about quality. So it's quite exciting really, just how scalable it is. And it's becoming more and more excited as the changes, really.
Yeah, and I think it's exciting that you remove that kind of final barrier, if you will, which was that sort of manual requirement. But yeah, that's really exciting. And Stuart, I know we've chatted as well about this with sort of the tech platform at Twine, but sort of what were some of the challenges that kind of you faced maybe in your earlier days around scale, and but what's the sort of huge opportunity really that you see for scale?
Yeah, with a marketplace, you've always got the chicken and egg problem of, do you have enough suppliers to fulfill the demand? So in our case, do you have enough freelancers to fulfill the companies coming on hiring them? The way we did it, which I wouldn't recommend, is we massively grew the supply side, so the freelancers first. That's partly because of our history. We initially were a very different business, and we pivoted. So that's why we have that history. I would definitely recommend generally to try and build supply and demand equally in a marketplace type business. Fortunately now, though, we've kind of got through to the other side, and we're starting to see a lot more demand coming onto the platform. You have to, I think with a tech platform, you have to try many different tactics and test them out and see whether they work, and then exploit them as much as you can while they work. And then inevitably they will stop working at some point because everyone will be doing it, or it'll become too expensive. And then you have to find the next opportunities, keep growing, and your sales and marketing team or product team have to kind of move quickly to be able to deal with that. With Twine, I think we've got a massive opportunity. Obviously, remote working and everyone being forced into it at the moment is creating a big opportunity for us. With more freelancers signing up to Twine, that helps our growth opportunities going forward. We're really trying to, because we've got an issue in the sense that freelancers signing up, there might not be enough jobs on the platform to be able to deliver for them. We're trying to add a lot more value beyond that. So that's kind of our main challenge at the moment, trying to keep our customers happy, keeping them engaged in the platform, making sure they keep coming back, and monitoring all those kind of, I guess, KPIs around your business to ensuring your customers are kind of happy and sticky on the product.
Yeah. So I guess, Mike, I know we sort of talked about that international capability. Do you want to kind of talk about how you've kind of seen international scale or even national scale play a part in your own businesses or your own investments?
It's interesting because I think it is a massive issue, and maybe answers. Jenny talked at the start about only 10% of the angel investment that was landing in the northwest, and maybe it is because we're not internationalising enough in the northwest. And I know it's a problem that Creative Scale Up will help with, and the various other programs around the Business Growth Hub. But for me, in 2016, I think we joined the international network, and I wasn't quite sure what it was that I was trying to do. But one of the first things I noticed was that as soon as I started putting people on a plane and they were landing in different parts of the world, all of a sudden people were thinking in a global manner rather than in a localized manner, just UK. It also opened up then a lot of different markets. We work with VCs who retain us, and when they put investments into the business, they tend to throw us in. It tends to be proven domestic models that are then internationalizing. And so we were able to, in meetings, phone up Tracy in LA or Waltz over in San Francisco and just get a quick view on the market in a meeting, which all of a sudden gave a different mindset. I think that ability to reach out, anywhere and get a view across India or China or Estonia or whatever, just means that you're getting a team that is more geared for what's actually going on in the marketplace at the moment. And also from an offer point of view, you are you've got a bigger marketplace to go at, and therefore it's easier to scale. And from another point of view, it just means that from a talent point of view, Stuart's model, of actually having people all over the place, it kind of opens you up to that as well. So we opened a San Francisco office. It's nothing huge, but it just meant that we had people out there who were thinking differently from the rest of the team, and it's a really interesting way of going about things. So I think international's massive. Yeah.
That's a great point. Thank you. So to kind of bridge that one and move into just your final kind of thoughts on risk and reward for investors in the sector. I think, Tim, we were speaking last week and you sort of blew me away with a stat on your portfolio of 43 clients. Would you mind sort of sharing that with everyone today around kind of, content can generate huge returns with little investment, or like what that kind of means for you guys?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And come back to the last point, there's people like to wax lyrical around the opportunities within tech, but it's reciprocated in our sector, in the creative sector. You only have to look at the success of Rockstar Games or content, and actually pretty low production value content like Candy Crush or kind of Peppa Pig, and the internationalized opportunities that exist within that kind of content. And so in terms of the opportunity for investing, the sector certainly kind of represents a great opportunity. I'd say it's relatively undersubscribed in terms of sector-specific investors. So if there are investors there, there are opportunities there, but the return on investments are compelling. But I think from our portfolio, and the point you alluded to is that it's an incredibly resilient sector, and I think I believe through the last recession we had, it was the one sector that grew. From our portfolio perspective, the success rates and the survival rates of our clients are incredibly impressive. We've only lost a handful of companies from our larger business loan scheme investment programs, but also through our equity investment programs, investing in really early stage companies from idea to growth stage. We've only lost 3 of our companies, our portfolio of 45 in the last there's generally an incredible there seems to be an incredible resilience within those companies, and I'd like to think because we're backing the right horses, but I think it's as much a testament to the creativity and the personalities that exist in the sector.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's an amazing statistic from a portfolio point of view. 3 out of 45 ain't half bad at all. I mean, Stuart, what would your sort of closing remarks be around the reward and the opportunity for investors looking to get involved in creative?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, and I guess as Tim just alluded to, it seems to be undervalued. So that just creates huge opportunities, and it's interesting actually. So when I think about the creative sector, I guess I don't necessarily think about gaming, which Tim obviously mentioned, and that's obviously well documented how successful some of the exits have been there. There's been a huge number, but I mean, even within gaming, I guess I'm thinking perhaps more specifically around programming, but obviously it touches so many different areas, doesn't it? From marketing to branding to creating content for video reels and all sorts throughout a game and a product. So yeah, I think it's generally though, for an investor, I think it's really undervalued. I think there's a huge opportunity. I think it's less competitive than other sectors. If you're going into fintech as an investment at the moment, good luck on picking the right horse there, because there's obviously so much competition. Yeah, invest in the creative sector because we're part of it.
Fantastic. I'll isolate that. And Helen, what would your sort of takeaway be to an investor looking to get involved in creative media?
Yeah, just going back to what I said last time, is just, I think, there are some big players in there and there's not much room for any new people coming through. So just to have that risk-averse attitude really, and to be open to taking a risk and seeing the bigger picture rather than focusing what's on the balance sheet and what your projections, it's taking a risk really and investing with some passion.
Passion, yeah, that is a good piece of advice. And finally, Mike, what would your sort of takeaway point be for another investor in creative?
Same as with most investment advice, which is back the talent. So I think we need to understand who can be best in the world at what they're doing. I think it's Irene talked about the issues that you've got around the education. I think there are so many niche areas around creative industries. Tim and Helen, etc., have kind of alluded to them. Some niches are extremely strong and has got some extreme talent in there. Others are very mediocre and fragmented, and you don't get huge amounts of value in there. So it's about understanding where those niches are and back the talent that can actually genuinely be world class and has got a vision for world class.
Thanks for watching the first Creative Scale Up event. Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss out on the next video in the series, Invest in Game. Businesses interested in applying for the Creative Scale Up programme or for further information should visit www.businessgrowthhub.com. There's a link in the podcast description.
This programme is fully funded by the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. I would like to say a huge thank you to our partners and sponsors and encouraging you to go and check them out on our website. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next time.